Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, "You are too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power."
Hotep, which in the language of ancient Egypt means we come with justice in peace. Welcome to Freedom Now, a Saturday Pan-Africanist and Internationalist World Affairs program. Freedom Now is committed to the principle of the rights of all peoples and nations to self-determination. We thank you deeply for your contribution to KPFK, which permits programs like Freedom Now to stay on the air. In this era of corporate acquisition and co-optation of all dissident media, we provide the microphone, challenging their corporate and racist point of view. So stay tuned for Agenda here at Freedom Now.
Habari gani? This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now's agenda for this Saturday, July 19, 2025. We commence with our sister, Luyanda Kuboka, and the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar. From this side of the Pacific in Los Angeles, Tongvaland, North Mexico, our central theme today honors Indigenous leadership in the Pacific from the Solomon Islands to Aotearoa, New Zealand. I recently attended the 3rd United Nations Oceans Conference as a media reporter and spoke with Dr. Pio Manoa, Assistant Director General for the Pacific Islands Foreign Fisheries Agency. He gives an analysis on what's happening, challenges they're facing, and more. And later in the hour, we're joined by Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. She's an Aotearoa New Zealand politician, iwi leader, and activist. She's a member of Parliment and co-leader of the Pati Maori Party. She just returned to Parliament after being suspended for doing a Maori haka alongside 2 of her Te Pati Maori Party colleagues in a video that went viral this past year. We discuss the attack on their Indigenous Rights Treaty, Maori resistance, seabed mining issues, the youth, and more dealing with right-wing government attacks. Our music clip mix includes MOK, Zap Mama, Alice Coltrane, Stan Walker, Maori beats, and more. So sit back, phone a friend, and as always we stand ready for revolution.
Buenos dias. This is Sister Luyanda Kuboka with the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar with critical dates and events in humanity's struggle against the greedy profiteers of the imperialist nations. July 18th, 1964. The Whites Rebellion breaks out over the issue of police brutality against African men, but was the tip of the iceberg of African people's frustration with the racist structure of the U.S. government. The Watts Rebellion and the subsequent rebellions and the Black Power movement throughout the United States ushered in an era of appeasement, with Africans in the United States being given access to European universities, jobs, military, non-profit funding, housing, and much more, all in an effort by the ruling class to co-opt the potential revolutionary growing consciousness of the masses. They also wanted to demonstrate to the world, and especially the newly emerging African and Caribbean countries, that the U.S. was removing the old shackles of segregation and ushering a new era of integration. The U.S. was competing with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics for ideological hegemony throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America. July 18th, 1936. The start of the Spanish Civil War, which by many was considered the most important social revolution in Europe of the 20th century. Workers organized self-managed factories, and peasants organized voluntary collectivization of villages and farms. This was the first European war against fascism, which would come to characterize Germany and Italy and lead to World War II. Many anti-fascists of all nationalities in the spirit of internationalism joined the ranks of anti-fascists in the civil war against General Francisco Franco, who overthrew the democratically elected Republican government. The fascists included the landed elites, the urban bourgeois, the Roman Catholic Church, and other conservatives who fully supported the rise of fascist state of Spain. July 19, 1928. Ngarewa, led by Aba rebellions of 1928 in Nigeria. Ngarewa, together with a cadre of women, forced the British colonialists to abolish a tax they had wanted to impose on women for being women. Their actions sparked continued anti-British agitation. July 19, 1979. The Sandinistas, a mass-based Latin American movement to liberate Nicaragua from the fascist Somoza dictatorship, which the United States, the CIA, and multinational corporations had propped up for more than 30 years, ascends to power, providing social programs and economic reforms that uplifts the quality of life for the workers, peasants, and indigenous people of Nicaragua. July 20th, 1925. Frantz Fanon, an African born in Martinique in the Caribbean, was born. He was educated at the Sorbonne of France in psychology and became a leading Pan-African militant in the National Liberation Front of Algeria, which led to the Algerian Revolution against French colonialism. He authored numerous books on the psychology of oppressed versus the oppressor, including The Wretched of the Earth, a mandatory reading for the Black Panther Party, SNCC, and numerous revolutionary movements throughout the world. July 21st, 1967. Albert Lutuli, author of Let My People Go, the autobiography of a leading African National Congress traditional chief who leads the struggle for freedom from the racist South African regime. July 21st, 1982. The settler colonial Zionist state of Israel invades Lebanon in a feeble attempt to destroy the PLO and the Lebanese resistance movement. Tonight, we interview one of the foremost experts on Zionism and the relationship to Lebanon and the United States. July 22nd, 17th century. Awa Shanks, a Native American woman warrior who fought the English to a standstill based upon a Native American confederation to repeal all whites from the native lands. July 22nd, 1796. 600 freed Maroons immigrate to Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, from Jamaica in an effort to establish a free society. July 23, 1952, Egypt breaks from the British neo-colonial regime of King Farouk, and state power is seized by the secret society of dissidents known as the Free Officers Committee, headed by Gamal Abdel Nasser. This signifies the return of Egypt, or Kemet, to its independent status as a free African state devoid of European control. July 23rd, 1892. His Majesty Haile Selassie Jah was born. Haile Selassie, the last emperor of ancient Ethiopia, was the leader of African resistance to colonialism, hence has become the god of living truth for the Rastafarian movement and a central reoccurring theme in reggae music and among all Pan-Africanists. Ethiopia, the birthplace of all humanity, the first Christian state, the only country in Africa not to be successfully colonized during the European terrorist assault upon Africa, is the most mentioned country in the Bible, whether said to be Kush, Abyssinia, or Ethiopia. July 24th, 1914. Marcus Mosiah Garvey begins organizing the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Community League in Jamaica to become the largest black organization worldwide up to and including today. Its slogan, Africa for the Africans, becomes the war cry for over 53 African nations fighting colonialization. This has been Freedom Now's weekly historical component here at KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, Southern California, always streaming live worldwide on the web at kpfk.org. So please join us wherever you are, in the words of those on the motherland and in the diaspora, as we chant Amandla, which means power, and the response is Awetu, which means is ours. The power is ours. Amandla,
Awetu.
Amandla, Awetu. Amandla, Awetu.
We have lived and seen the passing of a century, the life of Frantz Fanon, also known as Omar in his Algerian life. This remarkable intellectual, this truly world-changing revolutionary figure, this man of many personalities and transformations, is still with us because he's still in our mind. He still informs our thinking. And when we read him, we meet him at the deepest levels of thought and resistance to colonialism, to imperialism, to oppression, and for freedom. His voice was a voice not just for Algeria, and certainly not just for Martinique. His voice was for the world, and his messages about resistance to colonialism, decolonization, and revolution against the forces of global oppression still ring like bells in the night. His words are memorable. His message will last as long as men and women fight for freedom on this earth. His words have been translated into over a dozen languages, and they're still traveling in the minds and on the lips of millions. Frantz Fanon, 100 years. See you in another century. With love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
Yes, this is Sheikh Bilal Abdul Salam Bey, a prisoner at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility here in Hutchinson, Kansas. This is my final update, letting everyone know that I will be released on August 29th of this year. I will be going to Wichita, Kansas. So hopefully those who have supported me over the years will stay in contact. If anyone wishes to reach me when I get out, you can do so by calling the phone number, which will be 316-587-4992, and ask for Sheikh Bilal, and I will be available throughout the daytime. And those who have supported me, I appreciate all of your support, and I appreciate everything that y'all have done for me over the years. Thank you all for your time, efforts, and energy. Once again, it's Sheikh Bilal Abdul Salam Bey. You all have a blessed day.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
This is Sister Thade with Pacifica Radio KPFK Los Angeles, and we're reporting here from Nice, France at the 3rd United Nations Oceans Conference. And we are so honored to be joined by Dr. Pio Manoa, who is the Assistant Director General for the Pacific Islands Foreign Fisheries Agency, which is the FFA, an institution at the nexus of sovereignty, sustainability, geopolitics, and indigenous ocean knowledge. We're so honored to have you with us today. Dr. Manoa, welcome to Freedom Now.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. And so for our listening audience, can you tell us about your role as the Assistant Director General for the Pacific Islands Foreign Fisheries Agency?
Thank you very much. So for those that are not familiar with the Pacific Islands Foreign Fisheries Agency, we're an organization that was established by Pacific Island leaders in 1979 to help support our member countries better manage their fisheries. And so it was at a time when the international community was negotiating the Law of the Sea Convention, which was later adopted in 1982. And so in those negotiations, the international community bestowed upon coastal states vast areas of oceans. So we were blessed to receive vast areas of ocean and with it the resources over which we are stewards to look after for our people and indeed the international community. We are headquartered in the Solomon Islands, and this is an archipelago in the Pacific, 3 hours away from Australia, and about 3 hours also away from Fiji. And we're headquartered in the capital of the Solomon Islands, a place called Honiara. Wonderful place.
Dr. Manoa, you recently reported here at the United Nations Oceans Conference that Pacific nations are advancing progress on the United Nations Sustainable Design Goal 14.4, the regional fisheries bodies. But given the rising overfishing and pressure from foreign fleets, are these bodies truly empowered to protect Pacific sovereignty, or are they being undermined by global political and market forces?
This is a very weighty question with a lot of aspects to it. And so I'll go back again to say that we're the Foreign Fisheries Agency, established by our leaders, is considered to be an indigenous organization that's working primarily for the interests of our coastal states. We have 17 member governments that we are responsible to. 15 of those are small island developing states. They're all resource owners, responsible for the fisheries that we are blessed with. And so as a regional fisheries advisory body, we have a role to play. And our role is primarily to meet the interests and priorities of our members. So in undertaking that role, we are mindful at the Secretariat of the various factors in play. And that includes the geopolitical landscape, the geostrategic landscape that the Pacific is in. We also are quite mindful of the interests of the various entities and states that come into the region to extract our resources. But primarily, as I indicated, our focus is on our member governments. And these are our priority in terms of meeting their interests for the current and also our future generations of Pacific Islanders.
And so with nearly 40% of global fisheries overfished and scientific projections showing 20% loss of tuna biomass in our waters by 2050, what concrete steps is the Pacific taking to assert control before collapse hits us the hardest?
The Pacific is unique. Compared to other regions of the world, the Foreign Fisheries Agency is responsible for supporting our members manage the offshore fisheries resources. And we are proud to say that compared to other regions of the world, the key tuna stocks in the Pacific Ocean remain healthy. This is a different story in other regions of the world. And the reason why the stocks are healthy is because of the leadership of our member governments in working within regional and international fora to look after the stocks to ensure the ecological sustainability that is talked about. So our region is different. We are actively working because we know if the stocks are unsustainable, it will affect our governments, it will affect our communities that rely heavily. Your readers may not be aware that for most of our Pacific communities, our significant reliance on fish as a source of nutrition means that it almost constitutes about 70 to even 80% of the diet. That shows significant reliance of our communities on fish. So it's important that we maintain sustainability in the long term. So perhaps I'll speak from my region, and the region is things are looking good, and we will work to maintain it. Yeah? And I think other regions around the world can learn a few things or two from the Pacific region and the efforts of our members in ensuring sustainability.
And so with that, Dr. Manoa, you stated that in your presentation that we don't have the luxury to choose otherwise. With climate change threatening our fisheries and the Pacific receiving just 0.22% of climate finance, how do we interpret that? Not just as a funding gap, but as a deep injustice.
Indeed, you consider the situation of small island developing states in our region. We are not responsible for emitting significant amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, yet we bear the brunt of the effects of the activities and actions of the developed world. We will bear the brunt. And our scientists are already telling us that with extreme scenarios with respect to climate change, there will be a significant impact on our fisheries. They are telling us that our fish that's currently found in our waters, our tunas, will migrate eastwards, away from our exclusive economic zones, onto the high seas and moving towards the Eastern Pacific Ocean, which means that our communities that rely heavily on the tuna will not be able to access when the fish go out of our zones, which means that our governments that rely heavily on the revenue from the fisheries resources will also lose out. It's a significant impact on our livelihoods, on the economies that our member governments rely on for their existence. Yes, so I think when we look at the impacts of climate change, our leaders in the Pacific have repeatedly said this is a serious, and even the word existential threat has been used to talk about the impacts generally. In the fisheries context, significant.
Dr. Manoa, international instruments are often seen as a technical tool, but many come with strings, from donor control to hidden agendas. How do we ensure these frameworks don't just reinforce colonial patterns under a new name?
As small island developing states, most of our members are in a situation where we have to balance our role and our engagement in the international community on the one side with our capabilities and our limitations on the other side. As you'd appreciate, our administrations, the majority of them are small administrations. And so with the introduction of a plethora of these instruments coming in, our members face a significant challenge on how they'll be able to accommodate these new requirements should they wish to join them, and how they would need to implement all the obligations arising. In international fisheries treaties, there is a provision that is captured to try and accommodate the interests, particularly of small island developing states. And that is under the umbrella of a term called the need to recognize the special requirements of small island developing states. The special requirements will include capacity limitations, the need for training, for instance, the need for resourcing of various initiatives that needs to be taken at the national level. So the biggest challenge we face is if these new requirements are brought in, if our members do decide to become parties to these new treaties and arrangements, there must also be adequate provision made to support small island developing states in implementing those obligations. Otherwise, we are left with a situation where the member administrations in the Pacific are overwhelmed. There's a term that has been referred to in international treaties, and that is there will be a disproportionate burden of conservation action that's placed on small administrations. And I think there is a need for partners beyond the region to keep that in mind. There was always a need to ensure that the support is available to help smaller administrations implement obligations from these new arrangements that are being introduced.
And Dr. Manoa, if climate collapse, overfishing, and geopolitical intrusion continue, what's at stake for your children's generation in Solomon Islands? And what does real sovereignty over the ocean look like in 2050?
I think there are more than 2 or 3 different points in that question. First, let me say that climate change will have a significant impact on our communities. Generally, that's clear. We have coastlines throughout the region that are being eroded because of the rise in sea level. We have our significant coral reefs all over our region that is being infected, and you'll find that the coral reefs are basically the engine room where the fish are able to breed, our mangroves as well, nursing grounds for our fisheries. All of this will have an impact. And as I mentioned already, our offshore fisheries, like tuna stocks, they'll be migrating away from our zones, eastward, going out. So it provides a very bleak picture for the region. When we participated in the climate conference of the Pati, we always indicate that our objective to the international community, our message is always that we need 1.5 degrees to stay alive. In reality, it is going beyond 1.5 degrees at the moment. So we are faced with a situation where there's a losing battle here. So I think there's a need for stronger action, stronger commitments at the international level. We need meaningful action, less talk. We need things that will be able to benefit our people, considering that in our small island developing states, communities, all we have are the resources of fish. You take that away, you affect our island way of life, you are basically undermining everything that we value. So it's much more significant than most in the developed world would appreciate. Most of our communities, the only resources that we are able to benefit from and live on is our fisheries. You remove our fisheries, you're removing not only our way of life, you're removing our livelihoods, and you're undermining our future. So we hope that the international community takes heed of what our leaders have always been talking about. They use the word existential threat relating to climate change. That word means a lot and needs to be understood in its full extent, the implications it'll have on our people, on our governments.
Thank you for that. And Dr. Manoa, as we get ready to wrap up here, what message do you have for students who are listening, who want to become involved also in this work? And when you were talking about developing partnerships, what does that look like? Is there any specific organization or government that you can put on our radar? What does this look like in your eyes for our listening audience?
Perhaps I'll respond to that in a very general way. One thing is clear, when you talk about resources, like our fisheries resources and the various interests at play, it's clear that states and entities that come in are coming in to further their interests. It's all about interests. And what we really need is we need genuine partners. We need persons that consider the interests of our people, of our region, first and foremost, rather than perhaps interests that lie elsewhere.
Thank you. Do you have any information where you can guide our listeners where we can go to find out more about the movement in the Pacific?
Well, the work that the Foreign Fisheries Agency is doing, we're working to increase visibility of it within the region and beyond. We have a website. The website is at www.ffa.int. We've also got various social pages. So if your listeners would like to learn more a bit about what we're doing, certainly can join us on our socials or on the pages, and we'll certainly try to update as we go along. And if your listeners were keen on visiting the Pacific, wonderful place. If your listeners wish to visit us, please feel free.
And there you have the invite. And so we wanted to thank you, Dr. Pio Manoa, Assistant Director General for the Pacific Islands Foreign Fisheries Agency. Thank you so much for joining us today on Freedom Now, KPFK Los Angeles.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we wish you all the best.
This is Sister Flora, and you are listening to Freedom Now at KPFK 90.7 FM in occupied Mexico, including Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, and streaming live on the web at kpfk.org. Today's program, as well as 10 prior editions, can be reheard at kpfk.org/audio archive, and scroll down to Freedom Now. From 12 to 1 p.m., following Freedom Now is our sister Assumpta, with Spotlight Africa addressing issues facing Mother Africa. For a truly alternative international perspective on world affairs, check out RTTV Russia, CCTV China, and online at Presna, Latina Cuba Telesur Venezuela, News 24, South Africa, and Press TV Iran.
And before we go to our next interview, we're going to go to a clip of the New Zealand Aotearoa Parliament from November of 2024 when the Te Pati Maori Party members, when they did a Maori haka in Parliament.
We're in the middle of a vote.
Mr. Speaker, I call that a personal vote.
No, sit down. We're in the middle of a vote.
Mr. Speaker.
A party vote has been called for. There's a process here.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Te Pati Māori.
E ono ngā pōti e whakahe.
No, don't do that. The House is suspended until the ringing of the bells.
This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now, and we're so honored to be joined by a fearless voice for Indigenous rights, environmental justice, and decolonization, Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. She's a Maori leader, activist, MP in Parliament, and co-leader of Te Pati Maori, the Maori Party in Aotearoa, also known as New Zealand. Debbie has a relentless advocate for her people, challenging colonial systems from inside Parliament and on the front lines. Whether fighting deep-sea mining, pushing for justice in health and criminal systems, or asserting Maori sovereignty through powerful acts of resistance. As Indigenous movements around the world, from Standing Rock to Palestine to the Pacific, intersect in their fight for land, life, and liberation, her leadership offers crucial insight and solidarity for all those confronting colonial and neo-colonial power structures. Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, it's such a great honor to welcome you to Freedom Now.
Kia ora, such an honor to be here. I had to record you, so I'm like just as excited as you to be interviewed. So thank you. I appreciate the humbling interview, and also acknowledge all our other brothers and sisters and everyone else that's out there fighting the good fight. So kia ora.
Right on. Yes, here in Tongvaland, Los Angeles, North Mexico. So solidarity. And so as we jump right in, for our U.S. listeners who are unfamiliar with the Maori struggle, can you tell us about the Te Pati Maori Party you represent in Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament?
Yeah, sure. So in case those who don't know, we are Aotearoa, which is our traditional name for the islands of New Zealand. We're in the bottom of the world in the Pacific, and we were the last of the nations to be colonised. So as a consequence, we have a treaty, Te Treaty of the Treaty of Waitangi, or Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And that's the basis of our political movement. We're the only Indigenous treaty-centric political movement in the New Zealand Parliament system. And we were formed in 2004 by one of our esteemed aunties. She became a Dame Tariana Turia. And we were formed in response to the confiscation that was going on from the Crown at the time to our foreshore and seabed. And by the Labour-led government, to be honest. So she was formerly a member, and she pioneered in the spaces of us reclaiming our health, us addressing our inequities in health and education and justice. And then we had, around about 2017, the movement went through a pretty heavy time. And for the first time since its inception, 2004, it didn't make it through to Parliament. And so 2017 to 2020 became mine and Aori Waititi's stint to get the party back to full strength, and we were fortunate to be elected back into Parliament in 2020, so that was 2. And then in 2023 we brought another 4 more MPs into New Zealand Parliament system, and including the youngest who you've probably all met when we all did the haka. And so we have come back in full force with a very loud voice against a political climate in New Zealand that isn't too different to, I think, what others are experiencing in the US with an extreme right-wing government who have been trying to silence our voices. So it's been a real challenge to grow an Indigenous movement with a background of having an Indigenous treaty. So yeah, that's who we are as a movement. So 6 of us. Last week we unfortunately lost one of our MPs, and we're going through a by-election. So there's no easy day in the life of being a privileged Indigenous persons, but the rights and interests of us carry on as we continue to act in her honour and go through a by-election for a new MP.
Right on. And so we do want to go more into the treaty. So for our listeners, can you explain the significance of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the 1840 treaty between Maori and the British Crown, its ongoing betrayal, and how that history shaped the colonization of Aotearoa?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I guess one of the advantages of being the last of the nations colonised, and obviously at this end of the world it was by the British, is that we had seen what had happened across a whole host of Indigenous nations and peoples and First Nations people. So the treaty was, as the settlers started arriving, our ancestors, our tupuna, could see that they were arriving from England. They were unruly. They had, as Maori, we have traditional practices that are thousands of years old. I often tell people that Maori are the most regulated people by cultural practice than anyone else we know in the world, and which we call tikanga. And so our ancestors could see they were arriving without rule, without law and order. And actually, to be honest, felt a bit sorry for them because, they could see the indignities that they were putting on each other. So we agreed, 500 of our rangatira, our chiefs, signed with the Crown at the time, who was Queen Victoria, her representatives signed the Treaty of Waitangi, which is kept up north in Waitangi. It's our founding document, and it asserts our rights and our obligations, our interests that we have, and continues to assert that we never ceded sovereignty. So it protects our sovereignty, it protects our genealogy, our right to have uninterrupted self-determination, our rights to make sure that all our treasures, our taonga, such as the environment, such as our reo, are preserved. And it's made up of 3 articles, and it's continued to be, it's interesting. In 1840 it was signed, and it was continued to be a point of contention where the settler governments, and we continue to have settler parties running us, have completely dishonoured and disregarded Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So with colonisation and the settlers came land confiscation, illegal land confiscation, displacement of our reo, the forced removal of our people, imprisoned without cause or without any type of justice. And you may have heard about Parihaka and Taranaki, which is where I come from. And we've had, the passive resistance, which, the Crown had no respect for and came in and murdered and raped women and children. So, and that has been, sadly, the tone of the relationship set with the settler government. And in about the 70s and 80s, we saw an acknowledgement of the breach of treaty, and we've continued to see the standing up of tribal infrastructure to address those settlements. So, yeah, I guess like many, we have had massive land marches. We have had massive activation and protest to uphold our rights. Just as late as last year, November, December, when we had the largest march and activation of Māori and non-Māori side by side to continuously push back at settler parties that disrespect the intent and the integrity of the treaty. So, yeah, and so we say that the treaty protected our rights, not only acknowledged we never ceded sovereignty, so we were never, there was no conquest, and it continues to ensure that we assert our self-determination in advancing our vision for decolonisation. Yeah, and that's what Te Pāti Māori's whole existence is about, really, and you can guess how much they love us.
So with that, what does it say about the state of Aotearoa, New Zealand's democracy, that you and your fellow Te Pāti Māori MPs were suspended from Parliament recently for exercising your rights to do a Maori haka, as seen in the video? So can you kind of walk our listeners through what happened and how that moment reflects the broader fight against colonial violence and so-called democracies openly faced today?
Yeah, I mean, they just continue to use different tools to execute colonial injustice, but it's still the same fight. And we are a movement, and we often call ourselves a movement because, to say a political party just sort of cheapens the battle that we're up against. So we're a movement that that is unapologetic. We're unapologetically Maori. We have been raised to be proud to be Maori. My children in Mokopuna have been raised to be grown in our own reo, in our own language, in our own ways, our own practices, and which is Hana, we call her the kohanga generation. So that her first language is our native language. Her second language is English. I know. So we're doing okay. And we know that our elders got here because they challenged the system and they never ever accepted what the colonial system wants us to think has been normal. So every decision we make is tupuna ancestral inspired, and we've got to be mokopuna or grandchildren focused. And we, like many, know, get out of the way and just let Māori look after Māori. Don't talk about us without us. Don't walk about us without us. And that's been our own space. So when we've got in place at the moment probably one of the most extreme right-wing governments, I'm pretty sure they're reading the playbook of Trump. So the race relations in general with this government is at its lowest it's ever been. And we've had to be really active, very principled, and quite provocative in holding our ground where we've got a government that has tried to wipe out our treaty, which effectively wipes out, it uses these terminologies, one law for all. We don't want race-baiting, laws or legislation, which is actually their way of saying we don't want to recognise that colonisation never happened. We don't want to recognise that Indigenous peoples exist. We all arrived here together, which is just nonsense. So these are a whole lot of aspects that we've had to do, including standing up and doing the haka to what was the most repugnant, indignant attack on our very existence as Māori and as Indigenous peoples. And the only way we know how to debate and challenge back is to haka. And so we got hundreds of thousands. I think, it went viral. There were billions of views. My gosh, it's just not what we expected, but we did know it would get the world's attention. Just didn't realise get that much of the world's attention. And what we needed to sort of say is actually the narrative that Aotearoa New Zealand's, growed and looking after its tangata whenua, its Indigenous people, is wrong. And then we had to go through a system where the very government that brought a bill in to wipe out the treaty, which was called the Treaty Principles Bill, then put us through our privileges, peer reviews. It's like their highest type of justice review of our behaviour. We witty like this, I don't know if you know, but I was accused of doing a gun, all sorts of ridiculous things to demonise us with our actions of our hands, and there was a whole thing to try and make us, look like extremists, and we're, unruly and uncouth, all the words that colonisers talked about us before. And so the people who made the law, who we were, standing against, were the people who judged us. And, obviously we got unprecedented suspension. No one in the world had ever seen anything like that happen. It's never happened in New Zealand before. And it was more about the fact that we played up and didn't play their game. We embarrassed them. And, we've got to continuously push against this government, because the reason it's wanting to wipe out the treaty isn't just because it doesn't like Māori. It's actually wiping out the treaty because that's a protection mechanism we have to stop the exploitation of corporate entities, the exploitation of our environment, of our resources, of our community. So, we've got a bit going on at the moment, but, we're up for it. And, like I say, it's really elevated our youngest MP, and she continuously reminds us that there's a generation here that Māori and non-Māori who don't buy into the politics or the narrative, and they love Indigenous people. So we've got a bit of a struggle with, or a lot of a struggle with this government against all sorts of minorities, whether it's our rainbow community, our disability community, our women. There's a massive attack going on, women pay parity at the moment, and we withstood, the government voted down that Treaty Principles Bill. We've now in another hearing where the government trying to come at it through a backdoor to get rid of the treaty. So we are in a real, again, we talked about systemic racism and how it's operating in Aotearoa. I think the colonisation and colonial behaviours and the constraints and the constructs, they always default to the tools that they have utilised before. We're up for it. We've all been born out of resistance, and I just don't think they know what to do with us, because we're not only strong as Indigenous peoples, we're strong academically, we're strong in our well-being, we're strong in our community, we're strong in our village, and they just don't know what to do. So it's actually, it's a real interesting times, but it's a storybook that we've all been raised on before.
It's crazy to think that the haka, to move your hand like that, right?
Yeah.
And the Indigenous culture of being Maori versus looking at the timeline of even when pistols came around, right?
Yeah.
And then to get accused of moving your hand to now symbolize just because a freeze frame is going to get it. Like this
I
is
know. And we literally go like
so
this.
much...
We go into the house and, I better not talk because I'm very animated. I'm literally sitting on my hands, and it's our aunties who are very, very animated. Our eyes, we just can't hide our facials. And I think, that's the expression of when you've been raised in love, to like not suppress yourself. But the demonisation of us and the criminalisation of the haka and the way that this government has, tried to rein and pull us into their construct and normalise. We had some of the other opposition parties, but who stood with us, but their party made them apologise. So I know. So there's lots of dynamics, and we could say, well, that's the way that settler parties. You could be Maori, but at the end of the day, you're owned by Pākehā masters, colonial masters, who will state to you how you are allowed to be Indigenous. And so I think that's the freedom. We know the responsibility, and I don't think we were sort of laughing because I don't even think I've ever been kicked out of the house before. So my first discipline was 21 days. I'm like, and I think that's the ridiculousness of how confronted they were with our behaviour and how offended they were with us resorting to our most natural position of challenge back to the very, somebody trying to challenge the very existence. So, and we've got other things. This government's trying to stop Maori being in local government and trying to silence our voices in multiple spheres. They've cut back our language funding. They've cut back Maori health assistance and all these sorts of things. But we keep saying to everybody, this is a moment in time when you're born of resistance, your DNA is like, it's wired for the long game. And I think a lot of them are very old and very stale.
They don't like it if you try to decentralize the Eurocentrism in hearing that, basically is what I'm hearing you say. That's is right. The centering Indigenous values. And it's that ideological...
Well, ethnocide always comes out in that way. We get, let's chop this culture, let's chop their environment. And honestly, it is just a repeat of what we were raised to know that happened in the land confiscation period. But the other side of it, and I don't want it to look like it's... when you've been created in a nation and the systems are built of colonisation, racism and exploitation of your people, the struggle that we have for our own freedom and liberation is one that in this generation has got some great allies. So our education system and our younger generation, and the mere fact that we all have mokopuna grandchildren from every culture within our families and villages, they're struggling because there are just as many non-Māori. So we had 100,000 plus to a big march, 300,000 submitters in the parliamentary system who opposed the fact that the government was trying to bring in legislation to wipe out our treaty. A large proportion of those were great allies, were non-Māori, who we call tangata tiriti. They're here because of the treaty. So there's a real unity going on in the nation in spite of and despite some of these old ways of colonisation. And there's a whole lot of tangata tiriti, non-Māori, who have been decolonised, and they're staunch allies, and they're helping us to break down these systems that aren't working. So so we just got to keep at it and stay on the front line and explain to my grandson why it's okay for Nan to get suspended for 21 days, but he's not allowed to.
That colonial structure.
I know.
Yeah, as an educator here, I've definitely seen the systems in the schools here. Power to the youth, for sure.
I know. They're our hope. They are our hope. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of that here. Disproportionately targeting of the police, imprisonment at high rates of Black Indigenous communities, also who are facing deep health disparities. And so we definitely wanted to make that systemic racism connection between what's happening in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and some of the things happening, or a lot of the things, the majority of things happening here with Black and Native communities in the U.S. So did you want to expand a little bit on how that's operating in Aotearoa?
Yeah. I mean, look, if we were to talk about the inequities, our youth, Māori families are struggling the most, Māori and Pacifica. Our youth are the most homeless. We die 8 years earlier than any other race, which is stunning to believe that my grandchild could be born today and a non-Māori grandchild, and my grandchild's already 8 years ahead. It's just the solutions, though, have been well talked about, well versed. We have amazing educators. We've got amazing Maori models that have come back. But the problem that we have is actually selling the solutions to not only the colonial regimes, but also to the general public, because those who participate in democracy have historically been a lot of the older generation, a lot of the generation who lived in different safe lives and perhaps have even experienced hardship, but they haven't experienced hardship because of their colour or their culture. So, and I think that's, why it's been so important to protect the treaty is that states really clearly that any inequities that happen as a consequence of the breach of the treaty, as a consequence of colonisation and the trauma of colonisation, is incumbent on the Crown to resolve. The problem we've got now is a government that refuses to accept that inequities exist, and hey, look, that was then, let's just start again now. It doesn't matter that we haven't all started at the, not at the starting line together. So and it's manifested into addictions, really intergenerational social complex issues that are going to take us just as long as it took for them to be here to address, and that is targeted, very careful, patient Indigenous solutions, Maori solutions. And we get there with our language, we get there with the kaupapa called whānau ora, we get there and show ways that we can resolve and look after the whole nation. But it just takes one government to come and repeal everything in 1 year. So and I think we're going to continue to have this cycle until two things happen: that there is a acceptance of the history of this nation, and it's not of our doing. It is what it is. And ancestors did do what they did, and there is no denying it, and there is no pretending or saying, yes, we know it happened, but now let's move on. And the second thing is that we are left to look after ourselves in the way that, had the treaty been honoured, we would have. And I think those are some of the damning things, is that we're continuously having to fight people. Well, why should Māori get their own health system? Why should Māori get their own education? Or the fact that we are, enduring high disparities, the fact that we are the highest unemployed, the highest incarcerated, the highest dying, the highest with all the, medical conditions that could be resolved. So we've got a lot to do as a young nation, but the thing that I have real hope about is that there's a blueprint of everything that every solution or law, every healing, there's a blueprint. There's something that's been left for us to be able to start from. So it's simply restorative, simply restoring our tino rangatiratanga and our right to live uninterrupted, with dignity in our worldview, in the way that we spiritually and culturally deserve to. So it's crazy. Such a simple solution, but I
mean, the attack on the youth and hearing that the youth are the most homeless, and that's who we look to, especially even in some of the work, in the next generations, multiple generations ahead. I know we are kind of running out of time, but we wanted to definitely talk about the resistance against seabed mining. So even, leading this work ahead of us and talking about extractive projects that threaten Maori land and ocean, can you speak about how defending the environment is an extension of Indigenous sovereignty as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Indigenous sovereignty to us is our wakapapa, our lineage. And so when we talk about defending our ocean or our moana, when you rock yourself and you rock a baby, you sway. You're swaying because you're in tune with our ocean, with our whole, when you're receiving a baby, in your womb, everything is all made up of our ocean. Our whole crying, when we cry for death, it's falling like our ocean. We're made up of water. And I think, so for us, the ocean, the wai, are extremely tapu. We have kai out of it, we eat out of it, but we also are well. I'm a surfer, a really bad surfer as I've gotten older. My board's is about as big as a thinking boat now. But, and so in our world, we have this concept of our connection and our role to look after our environment. One, because we come from it, and two, because it's our mokopuna's inheritance. And so when it comes to our environment, our taiao can't be healthy without the other one. And so for our generations of people, we have the guardianship or kaitiakitanga that we've been raised to know and understand. Anything that threatens the existence of any of our tonga, we call them, the special treasures, we must stand up against it. And for a lot of things, when we lose somebody, when someone dies in the ocean, we have a cultural practice where we put tapu and rahui. When some of the beds, the ocean beds or the reefs are being depleted, we put a rahui and a tapu. So we've been taught over generations how to help the ocean come back to life. But there is no lesson that our ancestors have left us to help bring the ocean back to life after seabed mining. Seabed mining trashes everything that's on the bed of the ocean, which for us is papatunuku. It's still our whenua, and our whenua is where our birthrights and everything come from. So, and then without the land, without the whenua in the ocean, nothing can grow. When nothing can grow, nothing can eat. And so our whole existence is based on our ocean. So when we had something like seabed mining come to us, which is really horrific, because not only is it being proposed to come into New Zealand for the very first time, it's going to be open up to the world for the first time. And we have this revolting Australian company, Trans-Tasman Resources, with no experience. It's never operated. The activities never happened. We've been fighting them for 12 years, and we've won in every court, which is crazy because Maori can't often say that. So we've won in every court, right up into the Supreme Court. And then recently, sadly, this government brought through a new law called Fast Track, which basically invited companies that have not been able to get through the legal way to come in through a backdoor politically. And these companies have been associated to helping fund various politicians' campaigns, political campaigns. So it's a really hard battle, and at the moment our role has been to mobilise the masses to, obviously we've been up for 12 years, so to bring the next generation. I've been to United Nations in Portugal and put the fight to everyone, and our whole thing is to get this government out, to get into government next year and to repeal this bill as fast as we can and protect the ocean for future generations. This is not the activity. It's not a sustainable activity. It's not an activity that would bring any justice to any communities that have to live with it. It has 50 million tonnes of sand that they're looking to take up for 35 years, take the minerals out of it and then drop the mud, drop the sludge, which will just sit and strangle everything the size of 600 square kilometres. So it's horrific, and the threat to it starting is real now, more than we've ever had. So we have got a massive campaign going. We've identified those with boats. Should it get through, and the activation that we have to do on water, which is going to be really tough for me because I'm only used to being on a surfboard. But yeah, we'll fight it to the end, and we won't give up because we know that once we let it in, the precedent set for our Pacifica nations, our cousins, will be just be devastating. So yeah, we've got a bit of a stink government here at the moment. So and again, so the reason why we're in politics is to use their own tools against them, and we've got growing support. We've been really humbled by the growing groundswell, particularly of youth that support our movement. And we just have to believe that everyone deserves to live well, particularly those of this nation. That's what our ancestors wanted, and that's what our grandchildren deserve, and we'll keep up the battle. That's what resistance, fighters for resistance and fighters for freedom do.
And from this side of the Pacific in Los Angeles, our solidarity as well. And so for all of our listeners out there, can you give any kind of contact, website, social media platforms where folks can follow you to learn more about Te Pāti Māori Party and stay updated on what's happening with the bill? Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I have Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Actually, I think we have Blue Skies too. No one does Twitter over here. And my name is Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. Also, our movement, which would really welcome you to come on board. We've got a huge amount of our other Indigenous global whānau family, is Te Pāti Māori, TEPATI, and Māori, MAORI. And you'll see all the MPs, and you can follow us to your heart's content, but most significantly, show us that you're there, because, us standing as one in unity, for freedom for all is something we're all born to do. And I respect and am grateful that you've wanted to hear our story. Oh, we look forward to so much more. It's been such an honor to be joined by you, Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, here on Freedom Now. And so we thank you for joining us today. Kia ora. Thank you. And in closing, we'd like to thank our guests. Thank you, Dr. Pio Manoa. Thank you, Debbie Ngarewa-Packer. Special shout out, thank you to Vita Tupo. Thank you to Phil McCabe. Thank you to our co-producers, Dr. Gerald Horne. Thank you, Brother Brandon, Sister Flora, and all those who made today's program possible. Please stay tuned for more KPFK programming coming up next. Signing off for Freedom Now, this is Sister Thage, and until next week, as always, we stand ready for revolution.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.
Power to the people.